A Challenger's Song, Chapter 1, Collision, February 1874. To mark the Challenger's first crossing of the Antarctic Circle, Captain George Nares, one of the greatest surveyors in the Royal Navy, orders wine to be issued to officers, scientists and crew alike. He cordially invites Professor Wyville Thomson, who heads the team of 6 scientists, to lead the toast. They've now reached deep into the Southern Ocean, a lonely place where the storms are many and the shelter scarce. All the men are in their Navy-issued polar slops, large caps with flaps to cover the ears, great jackets, trousers, boots and mittens. It's 10 p.m. and the sun is still above the horizon, with the sky lit like fire. Joe Matkin, assistant steward, turns again to his letter-writing, pen in hand, in the fog and warmth of the stove in the issuing room, 3 decks down. The last of the sun is giving all the bergs to the west a scarlet tinge, he writes to his mother. And there's any amount of great whales in sight, all blowing and having a game among themselves. Challenger's eastward course was then much impeded by the great lumps of floating ice and the roar they made, thumping against the bows of the vessel in the night. I shall never forget it, Joe writes. It was like thunder more than anything else, and the grinding noise woke all who were in their hammocks, and nearly everyone went on deck. It was a beautiful sight to see the ship ploughing her way through, and the light emitted from the ice made it nearly as light as day. The light is called by polar voyagers ice blink. At midnight it was light enough to see and read, and the sky was still scarlet in the west where the sun had gone down. On the 19th of February the ship passes any number of bergs, looking to Joe's mind like the towering chalk cliffs of Dover. But 5 days later, as soon as the scientists' dredging gear came up out of the water, it comes on to blow, and all hands are called to make sail and make away for Melbourne. The captain, with his Arctic experience, is inclined to force his way through the outer ice barrier and penetrate further south. But his instructions from the Admiralty forbid him. He doesn't want to end up icebound in the Antarctic, driven to eating his boots like poor old Sir John Franklin. And as the steward's assistant very well knows, we have only 3 months' provisions and 80 tons of coal left on the ship.
Oh, the mollymauk lights on its great white wings. I know what a lonely song he sings. Down upon the southern ocean sailing, down below Cape Horn.
There's a fierce snowstorm building, the ship now steaming close under the protective lee of a large berg to allow the topsails to be reefed, but some undercurrent is urging her right onto the berg, and as the captain hollers, "Full speed astern," Assistant Chief Engineer down in the hold, William Spry, cries out, "Full astern, all boilers full astern, look bloody handy." And even as he's yelling, they are throwing coals into the 4 boilers. Spry closes down the throttle, the screws slows painfully to idling, and he must stay his trembling hand, waiting for that sweet spot, somewhere between his expertise and a prayer, where he can risk reversing the temperamental 400 horsepower engine. He knows he must move quickly, but this is no lubber's docking manoeuvre. And as he chooses his moment to pull the reverse linkage over, the whole vessel rattles and shakes in the propeller's turbulence. The shaft is mere metal bolted to wood, the Southern Ocean vast, waiting to receive. As the ship rises and falls in the heavy swell, the screws slow, then strain and churn, then eat into their own wake, the reverse pull heading for 60 revolutions a minute and more. and down in the engine room, pistons screech and pound, regulators spin in a blur, coal stacks slide across the stoking room floor, the air heavy with dust and cursing. And as Charlie bends his back to shovel black coal into the boiler's roaring, hungry red mouth, heave and turn, for full steam was the orders. He thinks of home, and in the insane intensity of his labour there prowls a recurring anger. His father's crimson face screaming back at him above the roar and red of this furnace door. "You'll work with me." "I won't," he replies. "Get out then, you little bastard. Get out. Just watch me," he cries. Well, he'd got out. "Easy, Mr. Collins, easy. I think that's enough, stoker. Stand easy, Charlie, stand easy." Charlie draws a damp grey rag across his brow, plunges his pint tin into the pail of ice-cold water, drinks and spits out a mouthful of black phlegm, and pours the rest of the water over his boiling brain. It's a second swallow as the engineer is slamming the door shut on the last of the 4 boilers, and they're all now at full steam. The Corvette shudders violently in the pulling back and pounding back of the screws into their own wild, churning wake. "It don't have enough power," says Charlie. "I told 'em we needed more," says the engineer. And, lifted on the swell, the ship bumps and smashes into the berg, spearing the ice with its jib boom and the forward gear. The stokers below sway with the impact, while the men aloft, thinking they would have the top-gallant mast about their ears, scurry down with marvellous activity, and the captain and the commander, howling out orders from the bridge, hardly heard in the roaring of the wind, and the officers repeating the howls. The prow is a wreck. In the boiler hold, they hear the ice fist thumping against the oak, but the hull, after all, isn't breached.
Won't you ride?